Today we have Chris Corry, State Representative from the 14th Legislative District. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Can you share a little bit about your district and maybe one or two reflections about what it's like to be a state representative from the east side of the state, or as we say in Olympia, the other side of the mountains?
Absolutely. So my district is one of the largest districts in the state. It covers western Yakima County all the way up to White Pass, down to Klickitat, Skamania, and a sliver of Clark. So I have a lot of the Columbia River Gorge, as well as the parts of the Yakima Valley. Being from this side of the mountain, the east side, I find that I have to spend a lot of time educating other legislators, more specifically the more urban Puget Sound legislators, on what it's like to live on our side of the mountain, and that our needs are different, so that when we're crafting policy as legislators, we don't just think about how this affects the Puget Sound, but how it impacts the entire state. We have a phrase that we use in Olympia called One Washington, and that's my job, is to make sure that when we do pass laws, that they are beneficial for all of Washington, and that we're passing one Washington legislation.
And speaking of One Washington, the restrictions have had a huge impact on Washington state, both our society and our economy. And I know that along with a group of representatives, you filed suit against the governor in federal court, alleging that his stay-home orders were unconstitutional. Can you share what your motivation was to participate in that?
Yeah, I'd love to. This was something that didn't come easily, and it took us a long time to get to the point where we felt that the courts needed to be part of the conversation on how emergency powers work in the state. When the first emergency order was declared, along with the stay home, stay healthy orders, we were all largely in support. We wanted to make sure our hospitals weren't overwhelmed. We didn't understand, what implications this disease would have in our communities. And we did that. We got people home. We got people prepped, the hospitals and the other healthcare systems ready to go so that we didn't overwhelm them. And that was successful. But what we found was that the governor, over the course of about 50 days, just continued to push us out and ignore us and refuse to let us be part of that plan, and really shut out a lot of Washington. So when he continued the order again, we decided that it was time to file suit, because we believed that he had met the provisions of his emergency proclamation, and it was time to step down from that emergency authority and give power back to the people of the state, which he still has not done. So we believe it was appropriate to settle this within the courts to determine what is and is not allowed, as people's rights and other things are just being impacted by this shutdown.
Can you explain what the Citizen Action Defense Fund is and how that fits into what you're doing?
Absolutely. So we are not suing, I should say, as legislators in our official capacity. We're suing as individuals in the state who believe that we have been wronged in this. And so in order to do that, we're having to pay for the attorneys out of our own pockets. So those of us on the lawsuit have contributed ourselves, and we're asking others to, if they wish, help us with this lawsuit. And so that's where the Citizens Action Defense Fund was started. It's a nonprofit that allows citizens across the state to donate to help the legal cause. As you can imagine, going up against the state, they have unlimited resources when it comes to how they handle lawsuits, and we unfortunately don't. So it's a David versus Goliath, but we believe we're fighting the right fight.
Well, in another instance of David versus Goliath, what are your thoughts about the governor's new emergency rule that allows L&I to fine businesses who violated the stay home, stay healthy order?
So I believe that there are significant questions around the legality of that piece, and that's a whole nother long topic, but it just goes to show you what happens when a government gets out of control. And when you push back, it doesn't like what you do, so it uses its enforcement powers to force you into compliance. Businesses want to be part of this solution. They want to get people back to work safely. They want to keep their customers healthy. They want to keep their employees healthy. I have worked with dozens of businesses in my district alone to help craft safe reopening plans so that they can reopen, to keep their employees on payroll, so that they can keep their small business open while keeping the public safe. And we can do both. There's this weird disconnect right now that says you can only protect the people or protect the economy. I think that's wrong. I think you can do both. And we will be better able to help those that are most vulnerable if we have a functioning economy that can provide us the resources to do that. So let's, my argument has always been now, let's use a scalpel, not a sledgehammer to address this. And I think that the idea of weaponizing L&I to scare businesses who are just trying to survive is pretty the wrong direction for Washington to be headed.
Well, another wrong direction for Washington to be headed is some of the violent protests that we've seen in recent days. Can you share some of your thoughts about the right to peaceably assemble and maybe some of the about some of the violence that's being experienced by our state and across the nation?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. And unfortunately, we've seen a pretty interesting response from our governor when it comes to peaceably assemble. When it came to those who were upset or frustrated and were assembling to discuss the lockdown and protest the lockdown because they believed that their rights were being violated, the governor used some pretty stark language saying what they were doing was illegal and that they were going to be harming people, among other things. But then when it came to the protests and then the unfortunate looting and rioting, he said they have a constitutional right to do it. So entirely hypocritical, in my opinion, that one would be okay and one wouldn't. I believe from as far as the protesting goes, protesting is allowed on either side. And I think both had a legitimate argument and a reason to be out and protesting. I don't believe that looting and rioting is protected speech. I don't believe that it is constitutional speech. And I believe that it is a criminal act that should be punished. I also don't think that the people that are involved in the looting and rioting are doing it out of response to the police brutality incident in Minnesota. I think that they have a different agenda and are masking their actions behind a peaceful protest that is rightly seeking to address concerns with police brutality. So that's my thought on this. I think that I support protesting. I support peaceful protesting. I will never support looting and rioting, and I don't think anyone should. And I also don't think we should conflate the protests for George Floyd with the rioting and the looting going on, because I think that those two are not connected.
Chris, I really want to thank you for being on this Zoom call with me today. For folks out there that would like to support your re-election efforts, can you share a little bit about how they can do that? Or if they have questions or comments and want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Sure. So I have a website, votechriscorry.com. It has information that's updated, especially now with campaigning. We're not doing a lot of door-to-door doorbelling and meeting people just because of the COVID-19 situation. So we're trying to get as much information up as possible. But they can donate there. They can find out more about my campaign. I am up for my first re-election. I do have an opponent, so I'm expecting, to campaign pretty heavily. And they can learn more about me. It's the votechriscorry.com, if I didn't already say that. But I really enjoy what I do. I love fighting for Central Washington families and businesses, and I look forward to going back to Olympia, hopefully next year, to continue that work.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.